A very warm welcome to those who've come to join us in person here, and warm welcome from those joining on the live stream as well. Great to see you all here. We felt in the church that it's a really good thing for the community to have a hustings where you can see the candidates in person, get a feel for who you might be casting your vote for in a couple of weeks' time. And for hustings to happen, it needs someone fool enough to organise one. So we thought we'd give it our best shot for you, and I hope that you appreciate the effort. And lovely to have full representation from 6 of the candidates here and one who isn't able to come but has sent someone in their stead. So very warm welcome to you. Lovely to see you all here. I shall be handing over in a moment to Derek Hill. He's a retired Baptist minister in the village, and he'll be putting your questions. We've been gathering questions. Over 50 questions have been submitted. You can see them all on the website, mulbartonhustings.uk. Over 60 people have voted for those questions to put them in order of what you think is most important. So we'll ask what you think is most important first, and we'll see how far we get. If you need the toilet, there are toilets just through here. There are toilets through that door and towards the exit that way. Fire exits. It's a warm evening, so the fire exits are open, so we know where to go in an emergency, and out through this door here as well. Squeeze past me. I'll be in here managing the live stream. So we are, we've got this carefully timed. We're now 7:32. So I'm going to hand over to Derek, who's going to give a bit more introductions. And voting is closed on the website, so whatever is there. How many people have voted so far then, Derek? What's the total at the bottom of there?
Just getting it down. 69.
69, there you go. So we've got the order. You know what order you're going to be asking things. And really this is a safe space, a space to listen. The good Lord gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. And so tonight it's a time to listen to what the candidates have to say. And what we're trying to do is just create that space safely, respectfully, for us to listen and engage. And so, Derek, over to you.
Okay. Just a very brief word before I introduce the candidates, and that is firstly really just to emphasise what Adrian said. We've set this up so that you can listen, so that you can hear what people have got to say. My task today, as chair, is to try to make sure that that happens. So, we don't want to, I know people get heated about these things and all the rest of it, but we want, please, that people who are in the room or people on the online or people who watch the video afterwards can hear. Then, once you've heard, whether you agree with any particular person or whether you vehemently disagree, you've got the chance on Thursday week to make your decision and make it be known. But it's not really for tonight for people to specify who they're going to vote for. It's for us to listen with a degree of openness, whatever our expectations are, and particularly a first chance perhaps for several to actually hear the individuals. So, I'm not going to go across the order, I'm just going to read them out in alphabetical order if they could indicate who they are. So we've got Chris Brown from the Liberal Democrats, thank you. Paco de Vila, who's an independent candidate, on there, thank you. Ben Goldsmith from Labour. We've got Chris Harrison from Reform UK, thank you Chris. Jason Maguire from the Social Democrats, Catherine Rowett from the Green Party, and in place of Poppy Sinister Thomas, who couldn't make it today, we've got Lord John Fuller, who many of you might know, who's been around in this area for a while, but he's representing her tonight. So the first section, with 2 minutes each, is simply to give each one of these people 2 minutes to tell us why we should vote for them. I've got their names literally in a hat. And the first person who's going to get that chance to speak is going to be Jason Maguire of the Social Democrats. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, so I'll just read from here, which is concise. So the SDP will defend and support traditional family life in welfare, education, housing, tax and economic policy for a happier, more prosperous and safer society. The SDP's industrial energy and skills training programmes will rebuild our manufacturing base. Trade policy will promote, protect British industry and secure well-paid jobs. Young people, we import labour, which we will end mass immigration. Instead of importing people, we'll get our people to work. And then, which also reduces wages as well, but if you bring in lots of people, low-skilled people, which they are, a lot of them are. Nationalised railways and utilities. Services are in decline and profits are siphoned off abroad. We need affordable, reliable energy. The STB will bring in our railways and utilities back into public ownership to serve our citizens. A reformed NHS, free at the point of need, must remain the bedrock of healthcare, but social care requires urgent improvement. The SDP will build a national care service to ensure good quality, comprehensive provision throughout the country. And build new homes. Every citizen needs a decent, affordable home, and young people must have the chance to start a family. The SDP will repair the damage to our housing industry by reinvigorating large-scale state sector building to provide new homes for over 1 million people.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know what's happened to my random order, but it's moving along the page. So, Paco de Miller, it's your turn now. Tell us why we should vote for you. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting me here. I don't actually have a kind of political manifesto. I have a proposition to you all, and I'm going to read about it. I believe politics has captured by globalist agenda, leaving an ordinary people disenfranchised. However, I believe that hope is in the horizon here and now. Parliament has 17 independent MP, while the Liberal Democrats have 15. I believe independents like myself, who hold a great respect for the community, are closer than ever to change the status of affairs. I propose the residents of South Norfolk to talk to their families, neighbors, and friends about the possibility of getting together, regardless of the political orientation, and start the conversation of a new Britain, an independent land of hope and joy and glory. I believe it is important to work together based on our similarities rather than against each other due to our differences. We can accomplish more as a uniting population than as a divided people. As an independent, I will bring great or real innovation. We must pursue the sense of community that our younger generation desperately need, but we can't expect change without making the first steps to change. You vote. And also, I would, if I get elected, I will increase the technical STEM college in Norfolk, more apprenticeships and tax relief for companies that provide them, great university grants, enable access to a wide range of young people, improve access to those with disabilities.
Thank you very much, Paco.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And the next name out the hat is Chris Brown, the Liberal Democrats. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. So who are the Liberal Democrats and what do we stand for? We've been around for around 350 years with our predecessors, the Liberals and the Whigs. So we've delivered many important policies for our nation over the years. But our 7 core values are liberty, equality, democracy, community, human rights, internationalism, and environmentalism. And these values run through all of our policies. So at this election, there's a real chance for change, the change our country needs. A fair deal where everyone can afford a decent home, a fair deal where every child can go to a good school and fulfil their potential, and a fair deal where everyone can get the high-quality healthcare they need and deserve. And a chance to elect a local campaigner who knows the area, who's part of this community, who's campaigned over many years on local issues in South Norfolk and will fight for a fair deal for you and for our community. I've lived in South Norfolk for 10 years and been a councillor here for 5 years. I've represented my local community and particularly campaigned on environmental issues, support for those most in need, and housing and homelessness. And what's my vision for the future? We're all in a very difficult position right now, largely due to the current government and the huge distrust that it's built in our democracy and in politicians. I'm an optimist, though. We're all here tonight because to some extent we believe in our democratic processes, and those processes can lead to real change if everyone votes for it. I want to see our democracy restored and a new trust in government, but that will take hard work every day by our representatives. We're a wealthy nation, and if used well, this wealth can ensure that we all have a fulfilled, healthy and peaceful future. I promise that if you elect me, I will work tirelessly towards this vision. I will be open and honest with you. I'll be here and will listen to you and represent you to the best of my ability. Together we can have a prosperous and a positive future, where the government compassionately supports and cares for those in need, enables everyone to achieve their potential for the benefit of all.
Thank you very much, Chris. And now for 2 minutes, we've got Catherine Rowett from the Green Party. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much. I'm going to begin by saying a little bit about myself. I am standing for the Green Party. I've been a Green Party politician for some time now, and I was your member of the European Parliament very briefly from 2019 to 2020. I've been a professor at the University of East Anglia, where I work on ancient philosophy. I've been there for 20 years, and I'm currently a county councillor in South Norfolk. So why would we vote for the Green Party? Well, one of the most important areas of our future is what we're going to do about the planet. And one of the most costly things will be to destroy the planet. So that's a core value of the Green Party, and you'll probably know about it. But none of that can happen without a whole range of other policies that go with it. So the Green Party has a whole spread of ambitions to make the world a better place, a place where you can travel well, where you can live well, where you can afford good food and high quality farming is supported, where you can go to university and develop your talents, you can have the arts, and we can also have international peace. So I shall answer the questions, obviously, as they come up, and explain more fully why we stand for the various things that we stand for. But the Green Party has a vision of real hope, real change, a world in which our children and our grandchildren can flourish, where there can be peace and not war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And now, on behalf of the Poppy Sinister Thomas, I invite John Fuller to speak. Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you. My name's John Fuller, as the chairman says, and I stepped down as the leader at South Norfolk Council after 17 years, when the Prime Minister advised the King to be made a life peer earlier this year. Peers aren't allowed to vote in the election, so I'm not standing, and I won't be able to have a vote either. But I am here on behalf of Poppy, and Poppy was selected to fight for the Conservatives in South Norfolk 9 months ago. Now, for most of us, the election caught us on the hop, and that's why she's not able to be here this evening. But I have come to know her well. Politics is about people, and she's a very personable person, and she gave up her job to dedicate herself to representing South Norfolk. She's knocked on thousands of doors in the last 9 months. She's bright, she's quick, she's dedicated, and as someone who was drafted in to help the health service during COVID, she's done some wonderful work there, and she knows how government works. That's important. She comes from the world of business, where she's been involved in energy markets, and she would be a worthy representative of us all. She's a very hard worker. I'm really proud to know Poppy, because she embodies the sort of conservative principles we all hold dear. The Conservative Party stands for building a nation where those with skills, aspiration, motivation, and often with the support of a loving family, can improve their lives and achieve their dreams regardless of background, gender, colour or creed. She represents all those values and more. Now, our nation is comprised of over 60 million people, each with their own aspirations, opportunities, drives, determinations and access to technologies. And there's a choice at this election to trust the people, the individuals, to use their own talents to grow a better place for them and their family and contribute to the wider nation. Which in turn generates the wealth, of course, to pay for our public services. Or we can have an even greater tax burden. The Conservatives stand for opportunity for all, freedom to succeed, defence of our nation, and a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And penultimate on this round, Chris Harrison from Reform. Thank you, Chris.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here this evening. I know Mulbarton quite well, and I come here every week because my best friend of 40 years lives in the village, and his daughter grew up here. So I am a local candidate. I actually live in Broadland. Don't hold that against me, though. And I mention that because, unlike the main two parties, I've not been parachuted in to try and take this seat because they're both desperate to win it. You'll have heard a lot about the Reform Party, but what I can tell you that you don't necessarily hear on the TV is that the local group of candidates have all come from business, public sector backgrounds, all serious people who've come out of what they're doing or might come out of what they're doing because they want change and they want to bring the skills that they've got, like I do, to the job, and we're serious about it. So I came to Norfolk, like my friend did, to come to the research park where I did a PhD, and I moved into the commercialisation of science. I worked for UEA for many years, creating new ventures for them. I put one of their first spin-out companies into Hethel Engineering Centre up the road, and I was a director of that company, and it's been there ever since, and it's been a real success. I've taken on a lot of difficult projects, often against the odds, and that's what this project feels a little bit like to me. I only stepped up at the start of June, so I'm probably the last to the game. But I genuinely believe that the Reform Party have got some good ideas. I think it's a new party. It's been very difficult to gear up for the election, and that's why, unfortunately, I've not seen as many as I would hope to. But I will fight for you. I know the local economy well. I own a retail business. I've been involved with businesses related to the agriculture sector, and I will fight for the area and for you and for change in the UK, which is what we need.
Thanks very much, Chris. Am I supposed to say last but not least, it's Chancellor Ben Goldthorpe to tell us why we should vote for him. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much. So the one thing you've heard from every candidate tonight is change. It's the word of this whole election. But we can't talk about change if you don't know more about me as a person. The thing that I need to share with you is that, like many people my age, 33, I had to leave Norfolk for work. I couldn't afford to move here, to stay here, to grow up a family here. I had to leave my family behind, and I had to move to Wales to find work. It's because I've been brought up with the values that you always try and do what's best. You try and work hard, you get yourself along in life, you save for a home. But so many people are missing out on that nowadays. So many people are having to leave our county. And that is the reason why I'm standing myself, is because what we need to do is we need to change how we run things locally. Not just that, we also need to look at how we're doing our services locally as well. In the evening, we will talk about the local surgeries here. We will talk about the lack of dentistry. We will talk about the SEM provision that is failing our children. There are so many things that have gone wrong in the last 14 years. But there is so much we can put right by working together. And that's what the whole point of the Labour Party is. We pull together on each individual's strengths, compassion and hope, and we work as a community to overcome the challenges that we all see. My background in terms of work, I've worked in Parliament for members of Parliament, so I know my way around the system. I know how to make sure that South Norfolk has a strong voice once more, because we've been missing out on that. When I grew up round here, we knew that there wasn't necessarily always going to be a weekly surgery where we could speak to our Member of Parliament directly. We didn't know if we would have an office we could go into to seek out support and advice when we needed it. These are all the things that I see as basics, but all the things that I would bring to you if elected your next Member of Parliament. So voting for Labour on the 4th of July means voting for real change, not just nationally, but locally, and making sure you have a voice which is ready to stand up for you.
Right. It's all right, otherwise people across the country wouldn't be hearing me. Oh dear, what a pity. If I can just put a personal comment in, I want to thank the people who've spoken because they've opened themselves up as individuals. And that really has been, to me, quite impressive. We're going to get into the detail. I'm sure we'll hear a lot of stuff about their party, but it is good that they've opened themselves up as individuals And I hope you will join me in saying thank you for that purpose. Thank you. But now we get on to the detailed questions, and they'll be taken in the order that you voted for them, those of you that participated in that vote. And as somebody who spent 30 years working in the NHS on the management side of it, I'm thrilled to bits that health comes top of the list. So there were two specifics about healthcare that featured. One was, how will you improve access to NHS dentists for residents in South Norfolk particularly? And the second one, what actions can be taken to rescue health services in South Norfolk and nationally, especially timely access? Okay. Well, other things more generally, if necessary, about the NHS. The names have gone back in the hat, and we will see who comes out first. And it is John Fuller, representing Poppy Sinister Thomas. Thank you, John.
And how long have we got, Chairman?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, right, okay. Look, I know if you read the newspapers, you think this country and the health service is doing, could be better, and it could be. But I think we should celebrate some of the wonderful things our health service does and the enormous progress we have actually made locally. And of course, there's more to go. But just for example, locally in community healthcare, £20 million has just been spent on a new community hospital. I've been involved with leaders from across Norfolk, council leaders, to get the new School of Dentistry established in the old Palmer's department store in Great Yarmouth. And locally, as a council, we have acquired the land and secured the finance to build a new surgery here in Humble Yard as part of the new development paid for by the developer at Heatherset. So progress has been made, but none of us can deny the astonishing impact that COVID has had, and it's a source of sadness and concern to me that there have been industrial relations problems within the NHS that have got in the way of putting patients first. I do think that we need to be more open to the ability for the NHS to change. If you go to France, GPs are almost small businesses in their own right, and they take on lots of different activities, polyclinics, and they act as a bridge between primary care and the health service, the acute hospitals. Doctors are private businesses here in the United Kingdom, but the contract prevents them from making progress. So we need better close contact there. I think we have a lot to say about pharmacies, and one of the areas where the Conservatives have innovated and will continue to do so is about the empowerment of our community pharmacies. And of course, part of our approach to mental health is through the National Service, but we may get onto that later. Chairman, I think we're now at time. How about that?
Thank you very much. And on the same theme, can we hear from Catherine Rowett, please? 2 minutes.
It's Rowett, by the way.
Rowett, my apologies.
Yes. So we keep hearing from the Conservatives about how much money they've put into the NHS, but we shouldn't just listen to large numbers and think that that's impressive. What's actually happened is that waiting lists have grown and grown and grown. Why has that happened? To start with the dentistry, the dental contract means that it's actually not possible for an NHS dentist to do the work that they should do and make a living. So the first thing we need to do for the dentists is not just have a dental school, which will help, but also reform the dental contract. So that is a crucial move. The second thing that we need to do is look at the per capita beds. So how many beds per head of population do we have? Now, we were really nearly wiped out by COVID, and the lockdowns had to happen because we didn't have enough beds per head of population. So we had to protect our NHS by locking people down. We don't need to do that. It doesn't make sense to have an unhealthy population, a population off sick, waiting for an operation. So the way to make this country work better is to get those people back into work. And that doesn't mean driving them to work when they're actually sick. It means actually getting them into hospital and healed. So our workforce will pay taxes and not be a burden to society if we have the beds available and the doctors available. Striking doctors is a shame. It was a shameful experience to have the doctors on strike. Why were the doctors on strike? Because their pay has fallen and fallen and fallen relative to inflation. And that's what needs to be addressed. And you won't do it by stopping strikes.
Thank you very much. This time it's Chris Brown on the same theme. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Dentistry, to start with. It's awful in this area. My dentist, absolutely no way you can sign into the dentist as an NHS patient. All my children had checkups booked about a year in advance. They've all been cancelled. They are not doing a single checkup, even for children. They're only doing emergency work. We've got to reform the dental contracts. I agree with Catherine on that one. That's the basis of the problem. Dentists cannot perform NHS treatment for the funds that are offered to them. So we've got to reform dental contracts. We would actually bring in an emergency scheme for free dental checkups by key groups, pregnant women, children, that sort of thing. That's a key thing. But it's also about prevention. So why is there VAT on toothbrushes? Shouldn't be. It's small things like that we can actually tackle this problem. And with the NHS and social care, it really is about money. We would put £9 billion extra in, raised from the tax on the banks that the Conservatives ended, and capital gains tax reforms. And we've got to reform social care. If people can't leave hospital, it's not a surprise that people can't get into hospital. So we've got to reform social care. We would have a social care commission, a cross-party commission, to once and for all discuss, agree and implement reforms to social care.
Thank you very much. And next we have Paco de Vila. Thank you, Paco.
Thank you. I think it's about economics there. I think most of the money going to the general medicine, and the dentists suffer the consequences of not having the budget they need to from the NHS, really. So they can't afford to treating patients without the backup of the economics there. And also, I think it will be interesting to have a little medical post, dentist post, a small community dentist post, a part of where they can practice in privately as well, in parallel with the NHS patients. On the other hand, I think the community has to come together and start looking for alternatives, because always looking for the government to give them money. Whatever government, all the political parties will argue, they did this and the other did that, and they never get together. They need to have consensus, like the way Margaret Thatcher used to fight for. And then when somebody or a particular political party isn't in power, they have to share in knowledge, they have to share in support in order to provide the needs for the people of Britain.
Thank you very much. And on the same NHS topic, Jason Maguire from the Social Democrats. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, so the SDP wants to cut the cost of management and overheads in the NHS generally by 15% and then reallocate those funds to frontline services. But some of that could go to, it didn't say so in the manifesto, but it could go to dentistry. An idea could be perhaps that we could introduce a mandatory credit scheme whereby a patient has the right to pay for their care over, or their dentistry over a period of time, where the NHS would then pay for it up front, and then but there would be metrics in place to ensure that it's not an open book. There have to be allocations to people with who actually really need the care, or they can't afford it, and that sort of thing. So I think that's essentially it. I'll reiterate what the others have said about the contract has to be changed. I mean, you can't go on without that. We can't do anything. It's as simple as that.
Not getting a green light at all, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's just going red and yellow.
We could probably share these. You could probably have that one.
These one there.
We can share this one.
That's all right, we've got down anyway. Okay, so our next person to speak about the health issues is Chris Harrison from Reform. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I'm married to a full-time GP, fairly rare beast these days, as we know, and I can assure you that every day in our house, health is the main topic of conversation until the election, of course. The problem with the dentist is the contract, as everybody has said, and you can thank the last Labour government for that contract because it was negotiated in 2004 and basically at that point cemented the fact that it was impossible for dentists to stay treating NHS patients, and inevitably over the years the rot, excuse the pun, has set in and continued to set in under the Conservative government. What's needed is a radical reform of the funding model. There's enough dentists probably, especially with new ones being trained, and there's enough money overall in the system, but it's completely not being spread appropriately. So by their own volition, dentists are pulled out of treating NHS patients. Personally, I prefer a system like the one in Sweden, where there is a modest insurance payment made that gives you back a voucher, as opposed to a per unit charge, which is how the NHS is charged for dental work at the moment. The Swedes, by the way, have the best dental care in probably in the world and certainly in Europe. So on that front, yes, access to GPs is not easy. My wife's a full-time GP. I know what it's like. We need improved management. We need less waste and less bureaucracy. We need the money to go to the front line and not be spent on management. And I can assure you, because I've been involved in the very businesses who are doing this, there is literally management of the NHS on an industrial scale. And it's frontline funding that is required, and trust the doctors to spend it appropriately.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And finally, the last chance on this NHS round is Ben Goldsborough from the Labour Party.
Thank you very much. So the one thing we've got to bear in mind right now is our waiting list is at 7.8 million. Now, over a year ago, our current Prime Minister promised us that he would get the waiting lists down. Now they've gone up under his watch. We were told that you could listen to him and he would take that promise seriously. Now, I think this is the most important thing for all politicians standing before you today, is to act with integrity and honesty and hold their hands up when they didn't do things, and to try and get things right going forward. And that's why with Labour, the one thing that we understand really well is how to make sure we can get the NHS back on its feet and get dentistry serving you again. We did it in 97. People believed that the NHS was gone. But by the time we left government in 2010, the NHS had the highest approval ratings in its history. Now, I can talk to you more about airy-fairy, but I can also give you details on how we will do it right here. So voting for Labour on the 4th of July will change the NHS and make sure that we have an extra 224,000 additional NHS appointments in the East of England region. It will also mean that we get another 78,400 additional urgent dental appointments in the Eastern region. Again, this is all for us. This isn't national. This is for us right here. It will also mean that this is fully funded without any of your tax going up. We're doing this through closing loopholes on the non-dom status, which sadly were promised to be closed under the last budget, but never were fully closed. So what you can do by voting Labour on the 4th is you will ensure that locally we will have NHS dentistry back in your back pocket, because I could tell you the story of my dad. He went to his dentist in Watton. He had a cracked tooth, went there, drove all the way himself in agony, gets to the door, and they turn around and say, we're not doing NHS anymore. And there's a lot of you in this room that will get that. So vote Labour and make sure that we can get the NHS back on its feet again.
Thank you very much. And thank you, by the way, for a very neat segue from the NHS into the issue of integrity and trust, which is the next item on the agenda. So that was a smooth transition. Government integrity and trust. And 3 issues got raised here. How will you ensure truth and integrity are at the heart of government if you are elected? And how can we trust you will put country before party, truth before image? That was the first one. Secondly, inevitably, over a 5-year period, you're going to have some unexpected things occur. What principles would inform the way that you handle unexpected situations that will occur? Ideally, just perhaps 3 principles at the top of your list. And then finally, does corruption in government, that is not complying with international law or MP misconduct, does that encourage wider unlawfulness in society? So quite a spread there. And I'll go back to my beloved hat. And our first person today is going to be Chris Brown. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks very much. Right. Government integrity and trust. Now, this shouldn't be a point of debate. This shouldn't be something that comes up on the agenda, particularly not at the second point of people's concerns. But it's this last government that has put it at the top of the agenda. My 3 principles for dealing with unexpected events. Firstly, deal with the facts. Base decision-making on the facts, not on some airy-fairy thought about what you think should happen. Base it on the facts. But also, care and empathy. Always consider how it will impact people. And individual freedoms. I believe in individual freedoms, absolutely, as long as they don't impact on others. So those would be the 3 principles. Does corruption in government encourage wider unlawfulness in society? The easy answer would be, oh yes, it must do. But then actually, people have their own morals. People are generally good. And I don't think the fact that Boris Johnson had a party in number 10 is actually going to say, well, actually, I'm going to break the law now because he can. I think people are generally good and have positive morals, and I don't think it really widens lawlessness in this country.
Okay, thank you very much. And next is Catherine Rowett from the Green Party. Thank you, Catherine.
I'm glad that the issue of international law has come up because I think that this is an absolutely crucial thing. If we think over the history of the last 100 years, it's easy to see that we came out of the Second World War absolutely devastated and shocked by what humanity can do to other human beings. And in the wake of that, we set up a lot of hopeful institutions designed to ensure that that kind of thing could never happen again. And we're now seeing some signs of resistance against those institutions that have kept us safe, peaceful, caring about other people, about human rights. And we've, in the time that it's been in place, we have actually extended our concern and our compassion beyond just human beings to other creatures as well, other animals, to the biodiversity that we live with on this planet, and to faraway places that have been exploited in the past. And it would be, I think, tragic to roll back any of that. And I belong to a party that will uphold international law equally and fairly, no matter who it is who is threatening to despoil the planet or to crush other people. We stand against genocide and we stand against injustice. And those are the principles on which we will respond to everything, always with compassion, inclusion, and kindness. Thank you.
Thank you. And we move on to Chris Harrison from Reform.
Thank you. I think we all know why the question has been asked, and there have been some pretty shocking revelations in the last few days about how people behave sometimes, people who are in power or were in power. It's, you know, I think it's flippant to say to people, oh yeah, I'm trustworthy and expect people to believe you. I like to think that everything I've done, whether it's business work when I work for the university or as a scientist, which requires it, to be honest, I've always done with deep integrity. I am known for it, and I firmly believe in it. In terms of when things go wrong, you've got to be honest. Ultimately, if it's your mistake, just be honest, you know, and don't panic, because what I've often seen in business and so on is your immediate reaction might not be the right one. So you always need to draw a breath and think about what the right action is. I quite like to ski. I've been in sticky situations on mountains, and the last thing you want to do is panic. So that's important. And also make sure that you take good counsel from people around you and wider who you can help you get through the situation, or help get through your own situation. Kind of agree with my Green Party colleague here, actually. We do need integrity in politics. Reform genuinely believe in change in that regard, and I don't recognise it anymore in the Conservative Party, and I don't recognise it in the Labour Party, who are happy to put spin on their policies to make you trust them just to be elected. Thank you.
Thank you for expressing your views. So, next speaker is Paco de Villa, who's an independent. Thank you, Paco.
Thank you. Well,
Microphone.
oh, sorry. Yeah, the truth will set us free. And the only way to deal with this situation in Parliament is to encourage them with the hands in the Bible to promise they will tell us the truth, no matter what, whether it's COVID, whether it's any threat in any way or form from the international arena. Also, in connection with this point, I would like to create, I will working for the creation of the Men's Institute to promote truth in our community, so that our children and grandchildren will be working on that. I already have the International Association for the Development of Integrity, already set up years in 2012, and I'm working on that, being informed to the Prime Minister and all the appropriate organizations. Also, I will working on that in terms of truth on the economics by the creation of the Norfolk Neighborhood Bank, basically working together with the National Saving and Investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Lord John Fowler, on behalf of the Conservative and Unionist candidate, Poppy Sinister Thomas.
Yes, thank you very. Oh, is that better? Thank you very much. Yeah, I do think we have a problem with politics in this country, and partly it's because it's from the narrow pool of people from which national politicians tend to be drawn. Too many people go straight from university to working for an MP, they become a SPAD, they become an advisor, and they slip in to the world of Westminster. There aren't enough people there who have come from the world of business, who possibly have raised a family, or even who have employed people. So that's the first point I want to make. This isn't about blame, this is about a factual observation. As somebody who's been in public life for 20 years, I also want to make the point about the debasement of social media and the feeling that politicians are fair game, especially after 10 o'clock on a Friday night. And it's unacceptable. We've seen MPs murdered. And that's because discourse in society has become coarsened. Now, that's not an excuse for poor behaviour, but I do think that it's a two-way street. We cannot have it both ways. While throwing stones at those people who have the honour of putting standing up for politics themselves, and then expecting nothing in return. Now, you've asked, well, what sort of things do you apply? And for me, and having been the second longest serving Conservative council leader in the country, I speak with some experience on this. Survival in politics relies on 3 principles: honesty, straight talking, and plain dealing. It's served me well. I believe it's served South Norfolk well. And they are the touchstones by which one approaches all those particular things. I think it's worth saying that in my long experience in local government, not so much in national, I have never seen corruption. And I've sought to root it out, whatever. Now, politics is about choices. And sometimes choices don't go your way. But if you're disappointed, that doesn't mean the decision is corrupt. That's the essence of democracy and where we stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Jason Maguire of the Social Democrats.
So most corruption is about power and money, isn't it? So I think the one of the issues is the police. Basically, the police should have powers, and they are corrupted by politicians. I know of a case that I could go on about personally, but I won't. But not involving me, but I know in detail that a lot of other people don't know about publicly. It is a very, very public. It was a very public situation. So that's one of them. Is the police should audit the politicians regularly, or we should have a police body that does that. That is uncorruptible. Essentially, they shouldn't be part of the Masons or anything like this. Or they should be convicted. The other thing is the 3-line whip. Basically, if you want integrity in Parliament, there's this dichotomy between the MP working for their constituency and then working for the nation, obviously, or their party. And the 3-line whip is an abomination of democracy. Essentially, you go to, your MP will go to Parliament with your best intentions and then gets corrupted by the party to vote for them instead of local issues. I think, everybody in every party has their own personal beliefs, and they represent a diverse group of people, and they have to do that. If you want a parliament that represents the people, you have to get rid of the 3-line whip. So you know what the 3-line whip is, right? And the principles, the simple principles of getting into corruption is go to the source, investigate, and actually convict people. Don't slap them on the wrist, convict them.
Thank you. And finally, on this particular point, Ben Goldsborough for Labour. Just before Ben speaks, for a moment, Ben, if you'll just forgive me, there is one other section to this element on integrity. And the bottom of the question there says, what would your number one aspiration be if elected? So after Ben has spoken, I'd like to go just right across the table, very, very quickly indeed, half a dozen words, no more. What would your first aspiration be if you were appointed as our MP? Ben first.
Would you like me to include that in my answer?
If you want to,
yep,
that's
we'll do
entirely
that.
up to you.
Right, thank you very much. I think the most important thing for you to know is throughout tonight, I'm not just going to be giving you warm words. I'm actually going to be giving you actionable points that if I'm lucky enough to be elected, you'll be able to see if I've done, and if I haven't, then you'll be able to give me a thick ear. So on ethics, there is a really strong set of principles that Labour is going to implement if elected on the 4th of July. So the first thing we will do is put an independent ethics and integrity commission in place. No more politicians marking their own homework, new cases being brought forward and investigated whenever the commissioner wants to investigate. The other thing we will do as well is we'll update the government's code of conduct for past employees who then become ministers. Basically what this means is if you've worked for a company beforehand and then you become a minister, you won't then be able to pass regulations for a certain amount of time. Again, removing the areas of corruption that can seep into the system. The other thing we will do is we will put in place, independent advisors which will be able to make sure that the investigatory powers that they have are truly independent. Again, putting another safeguard into the system to make sure corruption or any wrongdoing is rooted out the system. And also, we will ban MPs taking advisory or consultationary work whilst being a Member of Parliament. Now, personally, this is where it feeds into me. I will never take a second job as your MP. My full-time job is being your Member of Parliament, is standing up for you and being accessible to you at all time. I will never take paid consultancy work whilst being your MP, because my full-time job is being your MP. So in terms of how we root out any wrongdoing, and it may be a minority, but the minority drowns out the majority. So what we need to be doing is working together, and that's how we'll do it. And in terms of, obviously, the final additional point you wanted me?
What would be your number one aspiration if you were elected?
Making sure that there's an advice surgery every Friday that you can come and speak to me. I don't palm you off to a member of staff, it's me.
Okay, thank you. We'll just come along the table, starting off with Jason.
Mine is the abolition of the
Microphone, please.
three-line whip. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
It's the abolition of three-line whips.
Right,
Simply.
Paco, one for aspiration.
I will continue to work for the community as I've been since 30 years,
Okay.
door by door, all year round.
And on behalf of Poppy?
A safe place to raise a family and a strong economy to follow a fulfilling career.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Yeah.
I really struggled with this. I wanted to say something on housing. My 13-year-old son said to me, Chris, it's got to be about the environment, surely. So I came up with implementing a massive programme of home insulation so people have warm, comfortable homes and we save the environment.
Okay, thank you very much. Catherine, for the Green Party.
I'd like to change the narrative so that people understand that misery is not a necessity and that there's plenty of money to go around and equality is the ideal.
And Chris, for Reform.
I'm not going to mention any specific policy, but what I'm going to say, and it's surprised me deeply, is that we are rapidly heading into it being a society where we can't openly debate things, where diverse opinions can be expressed properly, and that's what I'd like to see brought back, which is why I'd like to see a diverse parliament with that type of debate taking place safely, and the public realising that it's okay to disagree sometimes.
Okay, thanks very much. That was an interesting run there. Just slip that in. I'm going to take literally a 15-second break in case people just want to stand up and stretch their legs, because it's a bit sticky in here, isn't it, tonight? So feel free, if you want to have a little wriggle just for a few seconds, and then we're going to come on to the environment. And feel free likewise. I hope that's all right the way it is.
Seems to be working. Yeah.
Trying to keep it reasonably light.
That's the thing, keep it moving.
No, it's lovely stuff. Okay, thank you very much. Let's sit ourselves down and start thinking about the environment. So the next item on your priority list, I must emphasise that, it's your priority list, not mine or the churches or anybody else. Number one, why are climate and nature not prioritised in the party manifestos? How will you help achieve more low-carbon homes, both new and retrofitted, renewable energy, and natural wildlife habitat restoration? Notice that question begins with the word how, not just will you do it, but how. And then finally, under the environment, very much a local thing, but a national one too, what are your views on projects like the proposed Norwich Western Link and the Norwich to Tilbury pylons? The need for renewables infrastructure against local objections to development. I shouldn't have given you a chance to stood up. You've all been very good up till now. Right, let's see how we go. And hand in the hat again.
I think we might need 3 minutes for all those.
Yes. Do you want to extend it to 3 minutes?
Yeah. We can do that. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. We're moving quite well, actually. But let's start with Chris Harrison and Reform. Thank you, Chris.
I'm glad it's me first, because I've pretty much already forgotten all that. Okay, look, everybody who's been paying attention knows what Reform's stance is on climate change, well, on low carbon and net zero. can I say to you that I set up and was the chief executive of UEA's Low Carbon Innovation Centre for about 5 years, and I don't need convincing about what is going on in the climate. However, and I've made the party know that I don't appreciate climate denial kind of rhetoric because it's complete nonsense. However, it is the case that you fix the roof when the sun is shining. And at the moment, we have got this big problem. The economy is on its knees. We've got all the problems we've already talked about. And yet we've got some politicians hell-bent on a short-term net zero project. We are 1% of global emissions, and we have exported our emissions that by buying goods from China, etc. And by the way, let's not forget that 20% of that target will, Catherine can tell me I'm wrong, but about 20% of that target will be met by basically carbon credits, which are trading carbon on markets. Lo and behold, like the financial markets, what could possibly go wrong? Where trees are planted and pulled up and planted again the next day, and the whole system is completely corruptible. And that's from someone who knows it really deeply. So I personally think we do have to postpone net zero. We do have to get on with getting the economy back in shape. And we have to bear in mind our position in the world. Yes, I agree with that. But we can't help everybody else, like the principle of first aid. You can't help the rest of the burning ship until you've sorted yourself out. That's how I feel, and that's pretty much how Reform feel about it. On the subject of the pylons, this is dead easy. No. And the reason is because the technology is so dated, it loses about 8% of the electricity as it's passed over land. It's completely ridiculous. There are far better technologies for moving electricity around. And lo and behold, the PLC that is National Grid has hidden reports on that stuff because they are driven by their shareholders and profit. And bear in mind, their biggest shareholder is BlackRock Investments, who are a US-based investment company who makes most of its money from oil and gas. And right up there amongst that list of shareholders is the Abu Dhabi Energy Company. And guess where they make their money? So do the detail, look what is actually happening there. And that's without me even mentioning the disruption to local people. Thank you. High voltage DC is the standout one that numerous reports have suggested is the right technology and not particularly more expensive.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Paco. Same question on environment, Paco.
Because of this economic situation, the environment can wait. Not going to die tomorrow. And I think that our priority is the health service, National Health Service. The priority is the ANGA, is supporting families, education. I'm not particularly keen on exploring expensive avenues for renewable energy. Because the government already spent a lot of money in adventures that it doesn't actually giving it a positive outcome.
Okay, thank you very much. And some very clear and quick answers. Chris Brown from the Liberal Democrats. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. I think if I can, I'll try and stand up on this one. Because the environment is probably what first got me into local politics 25 years ago. As a member of my local nature reserve, I started campaigning on environmental issues and became elected as a councillor. And throughout the last 25 years, that's been one of my top priorities. So this question about climate and nature not prioritised in party manifestos, it's one of our 5 fair deal principles in our manifesto. It's right up there at the top. So I've been campaigning on environmental issues for a long time. I was on the climate strike in Norwich in 2019. And as I'm sure John can tell you, I've questioned John many, many times at South Norfolk Council on the environment, on the climate emergency, on the nature crisis, and what action we as a council are taking, and how are we using our influence to get government to take more action. As Liberal Democrats, we would have a net zero target of 2045 or earlier if possible. We would make sure we had 90% renewable energy by 2030. This is not something we can put off any longer. It's been put off for long enough. In terms of some of the local issues, the Norwich Western Link, it's a really, really sticky problem. But if you talk to residents in the Cossey area, they've been campaigning for decades for that road. It is a nightmare for the residents there. They need a link built. Now, I'm really concerned about how the costs seem to be going up, and I'm really concerned about some of the environmental impacts. They have to be properly mitigated. But we do need that link. For the residents of that area, we need that link. Their local environment is decimated without that link. In terms of the pylons, I've been involved in for the last 2 years with my colleagues in this ward on that. In fact, in July 2022, I put forward a motion at council, which John supported, to raise the issues about the pylons to make sure all alternatives were being looked at and costed. And the full council supported my motion on that in 2022. I attended the Tibbenham exhibition from National Grid. I've read through the assessment for the East Anglia grid that they've published. And we can do an alternative to the pylons. We can do an offshore route or a DC underground route. They are alternatives. They will cost money, but the more renewables we have out at sea, the lower our bills will be. And part of that savings from the low-cost renewables, part of that savings needs to be spent on a better transmission system so that it doesn't impact the local people in Norfolk and the farmers. Food security has to be properly valued, and the impact on farmers will be huge.
Thank you very much. John got a couple of mentions there, and it's your turn now, John.
Well, thank you.
For the Conservative Union.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. I don't know where to start, really. Well, first of all, I don't accept the premise of the question that sustainability issues aren't featuring in certainly our party's manifesto. Let's think of some of the successes we've had as a nation over the last 15 years. On many days, 50% of all the electricity we consume comes from renewable sources. We've got the top five of the world's largest wind farms. We're investing in clean nuclear technologies, hydrogen, and so forth. Our reliance on fossil fuels has never been lower. That's a big success, and we should shout about it more. Locally on the council, just for example, a Conservative-run council, all our pools are now converted to air source heat pumps. Our new headquarters is so energy efficient, 84% reduction in energy use, we've actually disconnected the gas. These things are possible. We've made some wonderful progress. In terms of, as a planning authority, this is locally driven, ensuring new homes of the superb energy efficiency. That's part of the new building control. The new building control has enforced a further 20% reduction in energy consumption and water use, important for us in the local area as part of the new local plan. That has been delivered. Insofar as nutrient neutrality is concerned, which is one of the big issues, South Norfolk has taken a national lead. Those of you who used to see that pig farm by the bypass know that 4,500 pigs used to shit on that field, and the water went straight into not just the River Tass, but also the River Yare, because it's a triangle on both sides. We've stopped that stone dead. Now, that hasn't stopped some people whinging, but that's practical action. Actions where you don't declare a climate emergency, but you get on with it. And certainly in South Norfolk, we are independently acknowledged to be the council that is most advanced on energy issues. I think I've got a minute to go. National Grid, let's make no bones about it. And it started in this hall. National Grid has made a shoddy job of this. With their pylon proposals. And it's easy to kick against it for an easy laugh. But I think we all have to recognise that the way energy is produced, whether it be for small-scale solar, the way it's consumed in electric cars that never existed before, needs a more sophisticated energy transmission system, that's important. I don't buy the idea that this high voltage DC works. It has a technical limit of 70 kilometres and the wind farms are 40 kilometres off sea. It's not going to get us halfway to London. However, I do feel that the proposals, which are just all overhead, which would fence Diss, our market town of Diss, in on 3 sides, are wholly unacceptable and need to be done. We're leaders in renewable, and we've got the big bill. I think I've covered. Oh, the bypass, Long Stratton bypass. I'm really proud about the progress we've made there, because first of all, it started. It's improved public safety and air quality, and we can do the same for Cossey.
Okay, thank you. It was interesting. Somebody was asking for open debate earlier on, and we're getting quite a range of opinions expressed, at least. Is it going to be different from Ben Goldsborough in Labour?
Thank you very much. So, again, actionable points for the future. Voting Labour, this is what it gets you. So we will be able to get £300 off your energy bill because green renewable energy is an opportunity for us. Keeping investment in that means that we can become a green energy superpower. It's not sort of about dogma. It's not just about the brilliance that it will do for our natural environment. It's about actually ensuring that bills for you come down. And in this cost of living crisis we're all living through, I think we'd all be quite happy for £300 off those bills. Also, locally, just in the Eastern region, this isn't a national figure. For Eastern region alone, Labour, the next Labour government, will insulate 391,000 homes. Again, not only is that tackling our carbon emissions, bringing down our leaky houses, we've got some of the worst housing stock in the whole of Europe, but it also means that your bills are coming down. The other thing that we'll do by investing in green technology, and it's not just energy production, it's also carbon capture storage as well, that will produce another 56,000 new green jobs in Eastern region alone. Again, I'm not talking about national things. This is what will impact us locally. And then finally, we will have the publicly owned GB Energy. Again, what we're talking about, and the next thing I'm going to go on to about the national grid, it is a company owned by foreign nationals. It is not something that we have control over. It's a grid system that was built around a 1970s need for energy, coming from the coalfields of the north and from the production in the Midlands. It needs updating. I think most of us will agree that energy, we are all going to need it. We're all going to need more electricity going forward. In terms of where I stand on these proposals, when you knock on the door and you speak to anyone that's gone to any of the meetings held by National Grid, everyone says the same thing. The decision has already been made. It doesn't matter what we say. It seems that the National Grid is going to plough on ahead. But this is where I hope that I'm different from all the other candidates on the actual panel. Because, yes, I stand with you on the lines of where it is and how it's working and how it isn't working. But we need to be having someone who's prepared to think of the next fight. It's not just a case of what do we do? Do we just roll over and accept that it's happened? It's how do we make sure that there's investment, long-term investment in our community if the pylons go ahead? We need to make sure that that is being used to tackle the crises that we've already talked about in terms of the dentistry deserts, in terms of the schools being overcrowded, in terms of our roads not being held to a high enough maintenance level. This is where we can hold the National Grid to account for long-term investment. And that's what you need with the next MP, is not just someone who's fighting yesterday's fights, but someone who's thinking of the bigger picture, is looking forward and making sure that there are plans that you can judge them on and make sure that when it comes to the polling day in 4 or 5 years' time, that they are held accountable. I think that is what we're all looking for at the end of the day.
Do you support the pylons, yes or no?
No, not in the, as they're drawn up.
Your shadow chancellor does.
Nope, as I said is...
Thank you very much. Time is up on that particular one. We're going to move on now to Catherine Wright from the Green Party. Thank you, Catherine.
So definitely the environment is a key thing in our manifesto, so I'm not quite sure why it said that the environment and is not in the manifestos. Now, I agree with my colleague on my left, you're right, that with many of the things about climate change, but I think he comes to the opposite conclusion from what he should come to. So it's not the case that we should stop doing something about it. It's the case that this is the most costly thing that we're going to face. The cost of the climate crisis, of drought across the world, well, we've seen it in India and in Mecca and everywhere. The utterly impossible heat that people are experiencing. This is not something that is going to go away. So the situation is urgent. But in any case, clean air is actually beneficial for our health. So it saves us money. Clean energy, renewable energy is cheaper, while the fossil fuel companies take money from us and put them into wealthy Middle Eastern barons who buy up all the houses in London just to keep for the money's sake. That's taking money from us and giving it elsewhere. Renewable energy is actually better, cheaper, and the more we have of it, the better. So we need to address these things, understanding that the reason why there have been too much CO2 emissions over history is because of the industrialization in these parts of the world. That we're exporting our emissions now by buying in stuff from China doesn't make it that we're not responsible for them. So we're responsible for the past emissions and we're responsible for the present emissions. And the only way that we can deal with this is to reduce our consumption and our CO2 emissions globally, not just locally. And that includes the things that where we're not counting it, the things like aviation and shipping and things that are we pretend don't happen. So all these things need to be calculated. We need to be realizing that actually net zero is not good enough. We need net negative. We need to be taking the carbon that we emitted back out of the atmosphere. That means more trees and not some fantasy technology that doesn't exist. So what else do we need? Well, the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. Insulation, energy reduction, and so on. Sorry, I've run out of time. There's plenty more to say.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally on this question, Jason Maguire from the Social Democrats. Thank you.
Okay, so we think net zero will be uncompetitive also. The likes of China and India aren't fussed about it, and they're pumping out a pile of stuff that isn't going to matter if we do anything about it or not. We believe a national land use plan will be produced. We will have a national land use plan to produce and optimise the use of limited space and to ensure that the interests of nature conservation, food security, energy security, housing, infrastructure and landscape quality are balanced. We will support increased use of the green belt for small holdings, county farms, allotments, market gardens and community orchards. Private sector housing development on greenbelt or high-grade agricultural land will be prohibited, as will solar farms. We shall mandate energy efficiency into the planning and building regulation system. Subsidies will be available for solar panel installations on existing commercial and residential buildings. Planning consent will not be granted for solar farms and agricultural land. Single-use plastic in food retail and catering will be phased out within 3 years. Mandatory returnable deposits on drinks, containers and toxic waste products as batteries will be introduced. Ancient woodland and veteran trees will be protected in both urban and rural environments. National tree cover will be increased, always abiding by the principle of right tree, right place, right reason. Agroforestry practices incorporating managed grazing will be supported. A national hedgerow protection and restoration plan will be implemented. We will clean up our rivers by setting capital investment targets to prevent sewage discharges, by supporting farmers to reduce livestock density in sensitive catchments, and by robust enforcement of all water pollution regulations, so we don't have the problems they've had in Holland with the having to kill lots of cows. We will enhance the public realm in our towns, cities and villages through sensitive planning and development, a zero-tolerance approach to vandalism and graffiti, and by finding local authorities to recruit, train and pay unemployment people to deliver civic improvement projects. An overwhelming focus on climate catastrophe is fostering anxiety and despair in children. From early year to stage 3, all children will learn about British wildlife and be given opportunities to carry out practical conservation in their local area. The Natural History GCSE will teach the observation and identification of species, as well as introducing students to the inspiring achievements of Britain's pioneering naturalists.
Okay, thank you very much. It says a lot for what these people are trying to tackle, the sheer range of topics that we're covering. And we've just dealt with one that is very visible in terms of pylons and Western links and international elements. And we move now to a completely different one that is in some ways almost hidden too often. Social services and support. How do you plan to support the most vulnerable in the community, especially in South Norfolk? For example, the rising numbers needing food banks. And what personal experience do you have supporting vulnerable people? And how will this influence your representation of South Norfolk? And the first name out of the hat is John Fuller for Poppy's Sinister Summers.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I'm assuming we've got 2 minutes on this one. Yeah, good, thank you. Okay, back to 2. So look, it's the role of a civilised society that we look after those who need the help of the state. In fact, the Conservative principles are that those who can get on should be able to get on, pay their taxes. Those taxes are completely reinvested to look after the vulnerable. And that's where I have a 20-year history at South Norfolk. It's a council-run thing to pick up the pieces. South Norfolk's Help Hub was the first and is still recognised nationally to be the best 10 years on in helping people get back on their feet. It's not keeping on the hook, but really getting in, deep diving and solving people's problems. We support a different family, a new case, every 20 minutes during the business week. It's an astonishing achievement. We're looking after people, whether they're suffering from domestic violence, are short of money, with council tax support, whether they've had a family emergency, whether a key piece of furniture at home, dishwasher for example, has fallen away. We work hand in glove with our GPs, with social prescribing, and council tax support. It is the leader. And I think one of the things we need to recognise is what can and should be delivered locally in our nation and what can usefully be done at the centre in Parliament. Social services, again, paid for by council tax. We have a local care service done locally. So I think the role of the MPs is to free up the resources and to free up local councils to get on with the job, to address, as the chairman has referred to, some of the diffuse poverty that just isn't there. It's obvious in some city centre locations, but isn't there. Now, as a council leader, I've taken my responsibility to to ensure that vulnerable families front and centre. Sometimes, when I was leading the council till May, I won't be able to give you this story, but it's a good story.
Okay, thanks very much. And Chris Brown for the Liberal Democrats on this question. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I'm sure it was a good story of John's. I've heard many of them before. So at heart, I'm a consensus politician. And I actually think John has done a good job at South Norfolk Council in supporting those most in need. And when that happens, I will support him, as I have done many times in my Leader of the Opposition position. But we're in the middle of the Conservatives' cost of living crisis at the moment, nationally implemented by the Conservatives, causing millions of people hardship. What would we do? One of the first things we do would be to have a proper food strategy, £1 billion to our local farmers to make sure they can grow the food that we need and bring the prices down. We'd have a home insulation programme to reduce people's energy costs. As Ben mentioned with Labour, we would have a really ambitious home insulation programme. But child poverty is one of the big issues we have. And we would remove the 2-child benefit cap and bring thousands and thousands more children out of poverty. We'd also have free school meals for all primary school children, a policy brought in by Liberal Democrats during the coalition years for reception years 1 and year 2. We always wanted to extend it, and we would extend it to years 3, 4, 5 and 6 to have free school meals. What have I personally done in terms of supporting vulnerable people? For the last 6 years, I've been a trustee of a homelessness charity in South Norfolk, and I've done everything I can to support that charity. In fact, later this year, I'm going to be walking 450 miles for them, which I don't know why I'm doing that, but anyway. So homelessness is one of the key issues for me, and that's one of the things I've been supporting for many, many years.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm going to be there. Your chance to address this topic.
Yeah, my experience, on supporting community been back since I was 10 years old in Peru when there was a program called Alliance for the Progress from John Kennedy, and my mother was a community leader, and I'm helping her. Since then, I've been working in the community here in England for 30 years. One of the projects I did in the community was getting the whole community in Wyndham and Queen Street together with the church membership to restore the whole road. It was approved. When I asked in the council to give me a penny, they said we haven't got money for the. So the people themselves started working towards the project, and they continue to do that. I set up the Lisa Resident Association and another resident association with 57 families to work together towards the local issues they have, and without bothering the council or anybody else. I've been doing things on my own. I don't have a platform to help me. If I get into parliament, I will do things on my own continually for you.
Thank you very much. Ben Goldsborough of the Labour Party. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. The thing that breaks your heart is when you're invited to any food bank within our community. Only 2 weeks ago, I was invited to the Wyndham Outreach Community Project, and the gent who's running it for us there was able to point out that, first of all, he had applied for funding not just from South Norfolk District, but also from the Town Council, and had been rejected on both times, which had caused a lot of trouble and pressure on his services. The second thing that he'd pointed out to me was he was getting 60 service users a day. 60 people who couldn't afford the basics in life. If we've reached this point in our society, then, as I say, you measure a society by how well it acts on those with the least. And I feel that we've moved away from where we used to be. When Labour last left government, we had nearly eradicated childhood poverty in this country. And after the coalition government and 14 years in total of the Conservative Party in government, we have seen it skyrocket. And it has been an absolute shame on us all. But the thing is, you won't just want to hear from me why I'm so motivated by this subject, you'll be wanting to hear how we solve it. So, one of the things that we will do is we will have free school breakfast times for all primary school children. That is something that will take the family pressure burden off, will mean that families can actually go ahead with their lives and not worry about those costs. The other thing we need to think is bigger. There are longer term issues that we need to be thinking of which come from poverty, as mental health problems. So what we will do is we'll also establish youth hubs as well, which again, we had the last time we were in government. We had the Sure Start scheme, which was sadly scrapped. And that has seen so many people fall through the net. There is so much more we can do in terms of pulling together for the most vulnerable in a society. And we can do it. We have the resources to do it, and by voting Labour, we'll be able to unlock those opportunities for all.
Thank you. Jason Maguire of the Social Democrats. Thank you.
Okay, we believe in a fair deal for farmers, so we can produce more food and cheaper food at a local level as well. If Holland can do it, they're the second largest producer of fresh food in the world. Little Holland, if they can do it, we can do it here, and on less land. Or, with a comparable amount of land. That would be one way of doing it. We could introduce, I had an idea for a national fidelity card, or a patriot card, if you wish, where you could go into a supermarket and you could get a tax relief. It will be an oomph of a % on each thing you buy that's British, or British food. That could then go into a mass source and then be paid out to these people in need. So you could do that, and you could use that in different areas as well of the economy. We reduce the NHS will train British citizens. Sorry, not that big. National Care Service. We create a national care service that will be established, and will organise and implement and fund social care throughout the country to provide a good quality, comprehensive service. And a public volunteer service for aged care will be established as well. Those over 65 who volunteer for frontline roles in the public aged sector will receive credits towards the cost of their own aged care at the rate of £10,000 for each year of full-time service. In effect, this will reduce the upper limit on costs a person can be asked to pay towards his or her social care under the October 2023 cap. And I've worked in France. I worked in a retirement home for 2 years as a technician, not on the technical side, repairing things, and that I was an electrician in France. And I had the opportunity to work with some of the patients who were English.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris Harrison from Reform.
Thank you. I think that the bottom line is this. It doesn't pay to work in this country, and the fact of the matter is that even if you work, you're finding yourself in some cases needing to use food banks because you simply can't get by. And one reason for that is the enormous tax burden that we have in this country. So there is no point taking it with one hand and giving it back with the other. We need to reduce that tax burden, and that will not happen under a Labour government. Ben Goldsborough is a lot younger than me, which presumably is why he can't remember that the Labour government spent all that money doing those wonderful things, then was part and parcel of trashing the economy and leaving us with nothing, and with an austerity government for a decade afterwards. They simply cannot deny their involvement in that. Anyway, the tax burden is important, and the Reform Party will increase the entry point for income tax to £20,000. It will also give tax relief to people working in the health sector, and that includes social care. On a personal level, the most important thing I've done actually in recent months is actually be a wingman, really, to my fantastic daughter, who's been raising money for youth mental health services and for suicide prevention. And it's been nice to help her along that journey with two fantastic causes that really do need support at this moment. Thank you.
And finally on this session, Catherine Wright. Thank you, Catherine, for the Green Party.
Thank you very much. I'd first like to correct the thought that the 2008 financial crash was anything to do with taxation in Britain. It was a global financial crash due to unregulated banking. So that's just not correct. But let's go back to my answer to this thing. So they call it a cost of living crisis. It's not a cost of living crisis. It's a low wages crisis. The reason why are people in poverty? Why are people having to have in-work benefits? The whole system is set up in such a way that the public purse is actually making up for the low wages that are being paid, and still people are having to go to food banks. The idea that people in this country should have to go to food banks is shameful. It's something that we need to put an end to, and it's a political choice. So the Green Party would introduce a 10-to-1 ratio on pay. So at the moment, there are CEOs, chief executives are earning 100 times as much as the lowest paid worker in their firm, which is ridiculous. They don't need that much, and the workers need more. So what's happening is that the workers are being exploited and the money is going to somebody else. And then we're making up the shortfall. We would end the two-child benefit cap because the way that you start in life is the most important indicator for whether you will actually make a success of anything. Free school meals, yes, for everybody. Teenagers are hungry too. Why not give everybody a good school meal? But the most important thing is that work should pay. Goodness. There's loads more to say.
We're never going to cover everything, but thank you very much for those attempts. Now, the next... Whoops, Daisy, I've lost my list. Just give me a minute.
One more question, last one.
Yeah, I know which one it's going to be. But Okay, I can do it pretty well from heart. Because the next question was very much about foreign policy. Now, I think it is important to remember that we are looking today at 7 people who want to represent South Norfolk in Westminster, and a major part of Westminster's activity are concerned with national foreign policy. And that's something you can't realistically delegate locally. So an important question. But the interesting thing is that when I look at the questions that came up from the community here, there are 2 questions that were very, very specific yes-no questions. One was, would you support coming away from the European Commission on Human Rights? And the answer can only be either yes or no. And the second question was, is it morally justified, given the situation in Gaza, to continue to supply weapons to Israel? So 2 minutes each on foreign policy, but can you please give a specific answer to those 2 questions? Would you support coming out of the European Commission on Human Rights? And do you think it's morally justifiable, our present stance to Israel, given the situation in Gaza? Thank you very much. Right, dip my hand in the hat again. First person out today, Ben Goldsborough of Labour. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. So on the European... Hello? Is this still going? Yeah, on the European Court of Human Rights, I will not support us leaving that institution. It is one of the greatest British inventions by Winston Churchill. He was laying the foreground and the actual foundations for that, and it's something we should be extremely proud of, that we've led the world in global human rights and advancement of them. So no, I will not support us leaving that institution. In terms of the more complex question, because it is, we are talking about a Middle East peace crisis. We have not seen the situation as terrible as it is for very many years now. And I'm delighted that our Labour front bench, just before Parliament dissolved, called on the UK government to replicate what was being done by the Biden administration in America, which was a cessation of sales and a pause to make sure that the arms weren't being used on the horrendous scenes we were watching. Now, of course, we all remember the 7th of October. It was the largest terrorist attack on any nation that we've seen in modern times. Over 1,000 people murdered, raped, abducted. When we're talking about these situations, we are talking about such gruesomeness that our minds can't comprehend. We are seeing a situation spiraling out of control. We are seeing proxy wars flaring up across the whole of the Middle East. And we need very cool, calm heads as an international leader, and to build upon our human rights relationships, to make sure that we are leading the way with international partners. This isn't the time for hurling abuse. This isn't a time for whataboutery. This is a time for making sure that no more persecution is happening against any individual, that we are making sure that lives are being protected, and that we are making sure that our standing on the international stage is secure. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, forgot the mic. Chris Harrison from Reform.
On the European Court of Human Rights, I support leaving it. And that's simply because we are having foreign policy and our immigration policy dictated by a Strasbourg court. It does not mean that we are turning our back on human rights. It means that we are not going to allow a foreign court to dictate to us. On the subject of Gaza, yet again, the big parties here, and particularly the Labour Party, they deal in the world of unintended consequences, like during the last time they were in power, when their actions resulted in strengthening some terrorist organisations that we now see around the world and who are carrying out these acts. Ultimately, Israel is our ally, and you need to be, you've got to be a tough friend sometimes, and you've got to tell people who are your friends or supposed to be your friends to do the right thing. You don't tell them to do the right thing by just abandoning them. So actually, I think we have to bear that in mind. We have to continue to support our allies, but we have to influence them from within and by being their critical friend. I'm going to quickly mention Nigel Farage, because if any of you have watched the news, you'll know that it's been widely reported that he's made an error in talking about Putin.
Shame.
But Thanks, John. But the fact of the matter is that Nigel Farage is willing to open up the possibility and talk, like I said, about difficult opinions, different opinions, and the effects of our global policies and our actions on how other nations behave. And if you read the full reports and the history of that situation, you'll see that it's not been reported accurately.
Okay, thank you very much. Catherine Rowett from the Green Party.
Thank you. We would not support leaving the European Convention on Human Rights for the reasons that Ben has already given. We would end arms to Israel. We want not a pause, but a genuine ceasefire. And we need international law to be applied, as I said earlier, equally and not with partiality. It seems to me that we need to address the causes of conflict globally, and in particular we need to make sure that people's homelands can still support them, that there is enough food for people, that they are not suffering from war and having to leave their homes. So our approach to ensuring that there is not a constant problem with vast numbers of refugees and migration is to address the root causes of why people are having to leave and ensure that they can stay where they want to be, because we are going to see very, very many refugees if we're not careful. So we would increase foreign aid. And another thing to say about the ECHR is that it protects us from our own government. It's no good just saying that we're going to have a Bill of Human Rights, because part of the point is that we need an international court. We need somewhere that we can go if we're not getting justice at home, and that's what that serves for us. Sanctions are vital in managing situations of conflict. So ending arms to Israel is one example, but stopping buying gas from President Putin is another. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of Poppy Sinister Thomas, John Fuller.
Yes, thank you. Conservatives believe in the United Nations. We believe in NATO. We believe in the Five Eyes security arrangements with Australia, America, New Zealand, and the US. And of course, we believe in the post-World War II world order. These are the bedrocks of our society and our democracy, and we've never faced more challenge from Russia, China, Korea, and others since. So we're internationalist in our nature, but we support the European Convention on Human Rights, but not at any cost, because the British way, as replicated in the Commonwealth and around the world in our parliamentary system, is based on common law and jury-based justice. That's not the way it works in Europe. And I think the European Court needs to recognise that whilst we support them, it's so far, but only so far. Because if we depart from jury-based law and the primacy of Parliament too much, there may have to be a review of limits. Let's talk about Gaza and Israel. Look, let's be clear. Both sides have needled each other and provoked each other for over a generation. And now is the time for a ceasefire. No more weapons there. There are 3 million Gazans, it might be between 2 and 3 million Gazans, squeezed in that little corridor, which is the equivalent of Norwich to Yarmouth. 3 million people squeezed in there. It's no good. We need to have a convention to stop it. But we can't have it both ways. Because in Ukraine, where in South Norfolk we've taken more Ukrainian refugees than in any other part of Norfolk, we've also accepted Syrians, Afghans, and Hong Kongers too. We are a generous nation, but our capacity is limited. But in Ukraine, we must support the Ukrainians against Russian aggression. That's essential. The Ukrainians are spilling blood and fighting for our way of life. I've got 5 seconds to go, and that's really what I wanted to say. So international, but so far, but we can't have it both ways. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Jason Maguire for the Social Democratic Party.
Okay, so we would leave the European Convention on Human Rights for sovereignty reasons and the reasons given by both John and Chris, as they've outlined clearly. As as for Gaza, it's brass tacks really, what can we do? We have a non-interventionist philosophy on foreign affairs. We know that the Israelis have been encroaching upon Palestinian territory for some years. They just chucked them out of their house, and you could say, oh, it was a retaliation by Palestinians, but what kind of retaliation and by whom? The Hamas are not the PLO. Itzhak Rabin said that Yasser Arafat was a closer friend of his than Benjamin Netanyahu, but of course those times have changed, and so you've got the Hamas, who are nihilists in effect, because they're still fighting when they shouldn't be fighting, because they cannot win, and you have ultra-nationalist Israeli government that is hell-bent on destroying them. We need a ceasefire, obviously, but can we bring that about? I mean, the only people that can really bring that about is America, and we'll see. But that's it, really. It's, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And next to you, Pecco, do you want to speak on the international issues?
Yeah, I won't support leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. Am I thinking a little bit hard that when it comes to the WHO, because of private business? But in connection with Israel, Palestine, and America, because Israel is America and America is Israel, I don't think there is a solution for that. There is no state solution. The only solution is to call for ceasefire and maybe getting to a point where Scotland and England go in the 17th century, that there was enormous amount of people died on a daily basis, so they got to the point to say enough is enough. And hopefully, God willing, they will end in something like that.
Okay. And finally on this question, Chris Brown from the Liberal Democrats. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. Absolutely not. We should be proud of it. As Ben and Catherine have said, we should be proud of it. I am proud of it, and absolutely we should not leave it. In terms of Gaza, Ben spoke, I think, eloquently about the horror that we all saw last October, and this horrible situation that is ongoing. We need an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. The Liberal Democrat front bench have been calling for that. And I think my colleague, Leila Moran, has spoken incredibly in Parliament about that. And I think there's been lots of support for the way that she has spoken in Parliament. We need an immediate humanitarian ceasefire so that we can get aid in, and so that longer term we can work with our international partners, working together towards a two-state solution. On some of the wider foreign affairs issues that have been mentioned on Ukraine, again, it's about working with our international partners. It's about working together. We absolutely support NATO, and we absolutely support ongoing support for Ukraine and for their amazing military efforts. And I think there's been really positive cross-party consensus on that in Parliament. And I think that's really important on some of these big international issues, that we have one voice in Parliament and we make sure that voice is heard internationally, and we work with our international partners. And I think over many, many years we have withdrawn ourselves from some of the international aspects of political life, and I think we have diminished ourselves through that. We need to work internationally with our partners. And I agree with Catherine on increasing development aid back to our 0.7% as we achieved in coalition years.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to have a change of gear in a few moments. This particular section has virtually finished. And I don't want to steal the thunder at the end of the evening, but I do want to say a little personal note here. I want to say thank you, first of all, to the panel for comfortably trying to address all of these issues. And I want to let them know that I have decided, during the evening how I am going to vote. And I'd like to share that with you. The way I am going to vote, because my mind has partly been occupied on the mechanics of the evening, is to go home and to watch the video of what is going on. And secondly, you will not be surprised as a Christian minister that I will pray over the things that I've heard. And then how I will vote is I will go to the polling booth and no one will know. But I commend that journey to you. There has been so much information that has come out tonight. Not just the standard party stuff, but a lot of personal stuff. So I would commend you to watch that video again and to consider and reflect in whatever way you do, and then to make your decision on who is the right person for South Norfolk. Enough from me. I did not have permission to say that. But never mind, I've never been stuck with permission, have I? So the next stage is this. We're going to give you the opportunity of asking questions direct to the panel, or maybe not to the panel. Maybe you want to pick out one particular person and you say, I'd like to know about this. But I want to say two things as you're thinking of how you might ask a question. The first one is, it's got to be a question, please. Not interested in long spiel from the floor. That is not the place, and if I sense that is coming, we will stop it. Needs to be a question and fairly succinct. Make it clear who you are addressing it to. Be polite. And then we will get 30 seconds for the person concerned who's been invited, or two, to answer that question. So that's why it's called a quick fire round. If you have got a question you want to raise, we're going to ask you in a minute to put your hand up. Peter over here is going to grab a roving mic, or have you got one? No? That's my one, is it? Oh, right, that's it. Fine, don't worry.
Excuse me. Oh, hang on. We're going to look. There we go. Have you got it?
That's for me. There you are, Peter. Do better than I did earlier on.
Still working, yeah.
If not, I'll pass my one back in.
That's all right.
Are we all ready? Yeah. Okay.
Fingers on buzzers.
Yeah. First person who wants to ask a question, please. Down here, Peter. Thank you, because you've already asked two, so I'm going to hold you off for a moment.
Give the name.
Chairman's prerogative. Please stand up and...
This is a question for all of the panel. When you're elected, how will we contact you? Are you going to have an office? Because I think it's very clear that South Norfolk has not had any representation in Parliament for years.
Question, please, was the issue. So let's just come along the line. If you're elected, how would we contact you? 20 seconds.
Very easy. Any means possible. Knock on my door, email, phone, all the usual ways you can do it.
Paco?
Yes, you can contact me 24/7, and I come to meet you.
Ben?
I want to do things differently. It's not just a case of having an office which you can go to 5 days a week. It's not just surgeries that happen every Friday around our towns and villages, but it'll also be street surgeries where I will put through your door a poster you can hold in your window if you want me to knock on your door to speak to you, because it's important that your MP is accountable and also accessible all year round.
John?
Hang on. This one here, yeah. Well, I know that Poppy already has an office here in South Norfolk and has had since last October from where she's working. She's dynamic, she's visible. If you want to know, I've got a little leaflet here. She's knocked on thousands of doors there. It isn't just about being in person or on the phone, it's about using technology and systems and working together to navigate the wider state locally with councils and so forth.
Chris?
As I said, when I first stood in 2017 and when I stood again in 2019 against the Conservatives, I would have a constituency office. I would be doing surgeries right across the constituency. We need a really good constituency MP, as most places are. And you only have to look to North Norfolk, where Norman Lamb was an incredible constituency MP. That's what I would be.
I shall choose a nice place and have a constituency office there. but I shall also be on my bicycle around the place, and I'll be coming to your events and anything that you want to invite me to, and I look forward to getting lots and lots of opportunities to talk to you.
Chris?
I'm already based here, already have an office just up the road, and I'll be available all the time to you when I'm not in London, of course, and no gimmicks, just ready and waiting to hear from you.
So there we are, lots of promises of accessibility, all on tape, all on record, and you'll be able to play them back if they're not lived up to. Another question, please.
I'd like to address this to the three main parties, Labour, Tory and Liberal. Mulbarton has grown probably 3 times since I've lived here, yet the doctors and the schools haven't grown. How will you, as our MP, address that for future developments in South Norfolk?
So one of our promises in our manifesto is to reform planning regulation, and that is to make sure that house builders actually hold up to their promises that they make, but they always break. You know, we can only look at the St George's development in Loddon and see the damage that's been done there through a developer who's not upheld to the standards that they've been expected of. So that's what we will do. We will make sure that future planning actually upholds to developing the social good, because they're profiting. They need to also give back to their local communities.
Yes, thank you. In my earlier remarks, I already referred to the land that's been secured and the funding also for new GP surgery for the Humble Yard Group to be built out at Heatherset. So I think we're making good progress there. The Conservatives introduced still the community infrastructure levy in South Norfolk, Norwich and Broadland, and that's generating millions of pounds to be ploughed into infrastructure, and the Long Stratton bypass is just one example of that. You mentioned schools. Schools are under pressure, but one thing to make the pressure worse is to charge VAT on private schools, because all it'll do is transfer hundreds of kids into local schools, which are already they're basically all full as it is.
Chris from Liberal Democrats.
I've worked on many, many development projects across the UK, and doctors and schools are the 2 issues that come up time and time and time again. We need to make sure that legal agreements with developers are implemented. I think there's reform needed of the way the NHS operates, because sometimes GP surgery practices, which are private, oppose new surgeries because it will impact their business. So we need to actually change the way that works. But we need to respond to the community's requirements, and we need to make sure that developers are held to account.
Did you want to come in on that one, Chris?
I'm sorry, I can't not come in on that one. The fact of the matter is, and I'll give you Rackheath as an example, yes, eventually a surgery is about to be built off the back of a massive development close to the NDR as was. But the fact of the matter is, there won't be any money for GPs in it. And the only people who are likely to be manning it are existing GPs whose own patients will be going there without any additional funding, any transfer of any funding during that period. So to suggest that it's the fault of the GPs is absolute nonsense. It's the fault of the funding model.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question, please, Peter.
Catherine didn't get a go on that one. I think you might have missed Catherine out on that last one.
No, well, it was...
It was addressed officially to the 3, and I just saw Chris barging in.
Hello. I'm a WASPy woman, and there are 7,340 of us in this constituency. The Ombudsman found maladministration by the Department for Work and Pensions with a lack of notice of up to a 6-year increase in our state pension age, which has devastated many women's retirements. So specifically to the Labour, Conservative and Reform candidates, is this another unresolved injustice, and what should be done to resolve it?
John, do you want to go first? I'm aware that Ben went first last time, so I want to mix it up.
I'm aware of the issue. If I may, I'm aware of the issue, and I know what the Ombudsman said. The Ombudsman also proposed a remedy, and I think after so long that remedy is the one that if one accepts the Ombudsman's ruling, which I think you do, then it's really incumbent to accept the remedy as well. We can't pick and choose.
So exactly, the issue we've got here is the Ombudsman reported a good 4 months ago now, and it said level 4 compensation should be paid out to WASPI women. The current government has sat on the report. It could have acted straight away. So the thing that we need to be doing is make sure there's fair and fast compensation to WASPI women in line with an independent body that has taken this view. That's simple as.
Can I ask the only WASPI woman on the panel, I think?
Yes, so I am a WASPI woman. Last time I intervened on this subject, I was held to be, have an interest in it, and therefore shouldn't be allowed to make the claim that the Green Party would treat this injustice seriously. I wouldn't be claiming myself because I wasn't intending to retire at that age, but I do. I feel very strongly for the people who took early retirement just before they were due to get their pension, thinking that they would be able to survive.
Okay, and Chris, you were included in that.
Yeah, I'd like to make a prediction, and that is watch whichever government is in power come next month, kick the can down the road again, despite all the warm words. This is yet another action that needs addressing immediately. No kicking of the can, no delaying like we've seen with the post office. You can guarantee that either party that is elected will try to do that, but they need to act on the recommendation and do it straight away.
Okay, thank you. Peter, gentleman down here. We've already asked a couple of questions earlier, but they've been waiting patiently.
You're very kind, thank you. You're quite right, this evening is to help us make our decisions on who to vote for. There are 3 areas which sadly have hardly been covered. One is education, one is industrial policy, the third is agriculture. My question is, in terms of agriculture, I would like the candidates to explain their party's policy on agriculture and how to support it and increase food production, and in particular, whether they support the current ELMS conservation scheme within agriculture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to take that one first?
Okay, so on agriculture, are we there? Yeah, good. On agriculture, it's very important that this nation doesn't rely on the kindness of others to feed ourselves. Food security is one of the basic needs. In fact, in the hierarchy of needs, food in your belly goes above a roof over your head. And yet, I think we are at risk, and the Labour manifesto has 78 words on farming, in about 100 pages in total. We are at risk of taking food security for granted. ELMS is too complicated, needs to be streamlined. Every farmer shouldn't have to carry a civil servant on his back in order to look after the environment and produce the food we need to sustain ourselves.
The Conservative Party set up ELMS. So if it's not working properly, do we ask the people who implement it in the first place to actually try and fix it? It's a system that doesn't work for our farming community, but there's huge problems outside of it. We've also got problems for tenant farmers which haven't been addressed for a very long time, and it's very concerning to me. We also have different concerns as well when it comes to our shooting practices as well. There's been a report that's been sat on for so long in terms of deer management that desperately needs to be acted upon, because at the moment the action lands on landowners and not actually on the tenant farmers. There is so much more I can talk about.
We would triple support to farmers over 5 years. We'd have some support for horticulture, for fruit and vegetable production. It is absolutely vital that we improve the quantity and quality of food that we're locally producing. We would link farm payments to reductions in harmful chemicals. We support some of the aspects of ELMS, but and it's a great improvement on the cap. But we also need to end the unfair trade deals which have sold our farmers down the road.
Okay, Chris, Liberal Democrat.
Food and farming is a really important issue in this part of the world. Our food and farming strategy was put together by a former chair of the former vice chair of the NFU. The NFU has really welcomed the Liberal Democrat policies around food and farming. I will be meeting with them again at the Royal Norfolk Show on Wednesday. We've already spoken to them. It's a really important aspect. We would put £1 billion into food and farming, a comprehensive food strategy which would help reduce prices and make sure food security is right at the top of our agenda.
Okay, anybody else want 30 seconds on this one?
Just very quickly, one important thing that can be done is complete the Brexit action properly and actually properly have a food and fisheries policy that fits with our new position in the world. And locally, well, I've been involved in agriculture locally, and there is a challenge because we really struggle to make it pay compared to competitors. And we are going to see the EU flooded with cheap products again from the Far East, and there is a real international action required in order to keep us on a level playing field. No dumping.
Paco, 30 seconds.
If I get into Parliament, this is one of the areas I will put a lot of my time, a lot of my energy, because the farmers are under attack, not only here in Europe, by the corporations who want to control the food industry.
And Jason, the Social Democrats.
Very quickly reading our manifesto. Subsidies will be set at a sufficient level to enable farmers to produce food sustainably, targeting the most intensive and polluting sectors where the greatest impact can be achieved. Ultimately, we aim to remove dependence on subsidies by aiding transition to more profitable farming methods and ensuring producers are paid a fair price, but support will be guaranteed for as long as needed. We will invest in agricultural technology and farmer-led research and innovation to make high-yield farming less environmentally damaging and small-scale farming more efficient. At least 90% of existing farmland will be maintained for agriculture.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions from the floor? One right near the back, please.
Thank you very much. Could you tell me your opinion of the two-child benefit cap and when, if ever, you would get rid of it?
Who wants to go first? Yes?
We would get rid of the two-child benefit cap. It's creating far too much child poverty. We would get rid of it.
We would get rid of it immediately. It's the worst policy that there's been, and it's increased child poverty no end. And child poverty, they don't deserve it, right?
John?
The Conservatives are making a radical change proposals to child benefit so that anyone receiving up to £120,000 can continue to receive child benefit. At the moment it's 60, it's doubling the threshold. That would do more to address the child poverty you refer to than just having an extra child.
Can I just say that it also means that people have to make rape accusations, which is ridiculous.
Ben?
I wish I could stand here right now and say our party's policy is to get rid of the two-child credit limit. We can't afford at the moment. We are in such a financial mess that you need honesty from me of what we can do and how we can be ambitious, but we have to live within our means. That is eventually where I want us to be. But right now, the economy is in such a state that we need to make sure that we're doing the dash for growth to make sure that we have the income that we can then make sure we can spend.
Anybody else want to come in? Reform here, yes?
Just to make the general point again, that taxation and ultimately work not paying is a big problem, and actually giving benefits to people whose work doesn't pay is complete madness. That's what needs reforming quickly.
Politicians have been telling us about ending child poverty and poverty in general for donkey years. The only poverty they end is their own.
Jason?
I don't know our policy.
No, you're okay for that? Another question? We've probably got one for one, maybe two more. Yeah, in the front here, Peter.
Hi. I really love my local town centre, so how could you help keep our high streets alive and support local independent businesses?
Right. Who wants to go first?
Which town
Ben?
centre? Which town centre is it?
Well, I think he's asking generally, but which town centre do you particularly love?
So I think the most important thing, first of all, is business rates. They have been a noose around the neck of small business owners for so long. They're unfair, they're uncompetitive, and they really harm our local high street economy. So we will pledge to overhaul that system to make sure that small businesses are supported. But it's not just that. We also need to make sure that we have banking hubs back in our communities. We have lost all our high street banks pretty much in every single community. So Labour is pledging to do 360 plus banking hubs, which means that you'll be able to go there and make sure you have access to cash when you need it.
Yes, Chris, on reform?
Well, I'm going to slightly challenge that view on business rates, and unusually for me, I'm going to give a nod to the Conservative here, because actually a lot of businesses just don't pay business rates because they're exempt. So actually, we have to deal in what we're talking about as a threshold here, and I'm not sure Ben's got the knowledge to actually categorically state that business rates are the problem. For a lot of businesses, they're not, because they don't pay them. What our problems, though, are the burdensome tax regime, VAT, the burden on small businesses to complete those things for very little gain to the Treasury, and general big government causing an absolute menace and bureaucracy for small businesses.
Catherine?
So this is another consequence of work not paying properly and people being in poverty. So the best way to support small businesses and local businesses is for people to actually have some money to spend. The lower waged people in society spend more locally, and the richer people take it away and spend it on cruises. So that's part of our policy about the 10-to-1 ratio.
Akko, you were trying to come in?
Sorry to ask a question. You said Wyndham. Okay, I done a lot of work in Wyndham. One of the things I would like, I funded the Wyndham Business Group to start, and I try to encourage people to investing in Wyndham, to moving into Wyndham, and also at the moment it's in chaos. The roads are full of potholes, overgrown. It's in a mess. No, it seems to be they forgot about the town. Sorry.
Business rates needs complete reform. We need to get rid of business rates. I mean, it's ridiculous that people like Amazon on big warehouses pay a fraction of the business rates that local businesses in our town centres pay. So that's one thing. Banking hubs has been mentioned. Absolutely, my local town centre's just got a banking hub. It's great news. But we also need to encourage people to shop locally, and it actually comes down to local councils and town councils working together, investing in our local areas, and encouraging people to actually to walk or to cycle to their local town centre rather than driving to these out-of-town centres.
John?
Well, I'm delighted to have been instrumental in getting £1 million package for investment in Wyndham public realm to extend the trading day, to improve the public realm and the local environment. So investments directly going into Wyndham from our local council. But nationally, the Conservatives have a £4.3 billion support package for the retail, hospitality and leisure relief scheme to be implemented to increase the VAT threshold. And of course, as the lady said to my left, Catherine, we need more money to spend. And the approach we've taken to the national living wage, which has increased wages by 35% since 2016 and reduced taxes, NIC has put more money in local people's pockets.
Jason, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just increase, ditto to the rest really, but increase festivals would be another way you could do it. Have more festivals, or and more market days, and with more market stalls, so there's more interest.
So one final question, hold on Peter, one final question that I'm going to ask. It's one of the ones that was on the list before, and it's a question really for everybody here, but it's turning away from policy back towards you as individuals. Please can you name, you shouldn't be much more than 3 words, how can you name the person who has inspired you the most? Thank you.
Can you ask somebody else first?
Yeah, okay. Anybody want to go? Yeah, come on, here we are. We got somebody here. It was on the list, but it was one that didn't reach a shortcut.
So, as my friend in Mulbarton reminded me, my mum, who's no longer here, I grew up in Morecambe, in a pretty deprived area, shall we say, and my mum got involved in local politics as an independent, and then I think for one of the parties, probably the Conservatives, I'd imagine. But the fact is that if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have the right roll my sleeves up and get on and try and make a change attitude. So definitely my mum.
Okay. That's Rick.
Well, I think I'd probably need to say Caroline Lucas, who has been the sole Green MP in Westminster for so long and has managed so much from the position of just one. And I'd really like to see more than one in the next Parliament to hold Labour to its promises on various things. But I would also like, if I've got a moment, to remember that I had a friend at school called Leslie Orme, who was really an extraordinary character, and she got me thinking about politics and doing various things, campaigning and standing in the school election, and getting involved in fact in the count strike breaking. I wasn't wasn't really with it when I did that, but anyway, it was a very exciting time, and she got me into politics.
Chris, from the Liberal Democrats.
It's difficult to come down to one, but I think in terms of politics, I would have to say Paddy Ashdown, who I think if he were still with us, I think he would be looking back on the last 5 to 10 years in complete. I don't know what he would imagine. He was a really decent guy. So Paddy Ashdown on the politics side, and on the environment side, actually David Attenborough. I think he has just motivated and inspired so many people, and at his age, my children love watching him and learning about our environment, and I think he'd be in there.
Ben, I'm going to leave John for a moment in case he needs to phone Poppy to find the right answer. John.
Phone a friend.
Sorry, Ben.
Phone a friend.
This is a bit of a schmaltzy answer, and I'm sorry, but it will be my grandma Joan. She basically brought me up because Mum and Dad were working full time, and she taught me a lot about life. She brought me up by herself with Grandad Reg, and just was a thoroughly decent person, and I hope that if I can be just an ounce of what she was to the world, then I'll be a happy person.
Yes, my mother, she was a community leader, and I learned from her. And that was in Peru, in England, William Wilberforce.
Okay, fine. Are you ready now?
I'm ready.
That's all right, Jason.
Clement Attlee, because we hear constantly about Winston Churchill, and he had many faults as many greatnesses, but he kept the country going. He wasn't in the limelight, and he created the New Britain after the war, and did it in 5 years. He created the foundations of our nation, with after the war, in the war years, after the war years. So Clement Attlee should be spoken about a bit more often.
And John.
Thank you.
On behalf of Poppy.
Well, I'm going to say, my grandfather taught me his wisdom about business has always stuck with me. But I'm going to say John Major. Decency, honesty, a cricket lover. But most of all, triumph over adversity, because he won in 1992 when all the polls said that Labour was going to take a victory. But he saw through. And who knows, history could repeat itself.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one interesting thought, the number of people that commented on an unknown person, or unknown to us, a mum, a grandma, or whoever. And that is actually a lovely reminder that each one of us in our society can make an influence upon a greater thing. So thank you for that. It is time for me to now come along the line and to give the candidates... Do you want one more question? I'm trying to do as I was told, Adrian. Unusual for me. I'm normally a non-conformist.
Thank you. On your first day in office, what is your number one priority?
Who wants to take that?
That's to all the candidates.
Shall I go first?
Yes.
Well, as somebody who's just entered Parliament myself, albeit in the House of Lords, the first priority is to find a desk. Because without a desk and a telephone, it's very difficult. There's a practical point.
When I became an MEP, my first priority was to come back from the holiday that I was going on and find out that I needed to appoint some staff, and that was quite a steep learning curve. So I guess it will be that.
Well, I'm going to say, as one of the few people here who's not a professional politician,
No.
I imagine it's going to be find out how the whole thing works and where to go and where the loo is, probably, you know. So yeah, I think it's all well and good knowing your way around Parliament and all that, but actually I think we need some of us amateurs in there to shake it up.
I think my first priority would be to thank the people that put me there, and with humility to remember it's not about me, it's about the people that put me there and all the residents of South Norfolk.
John?
I've done,
You've done
I've done a desk.
You can do it again if
I'll
you
do
want.
I'll do my desk, yeah,
Sorry.
and find the loo.
It'll actually be to answer your questions in terms of your casework and act upon it straight away from day one.
I've said it already, forward a motion to abolish the three-line whip, which would advance democracy in Britain.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to give the candidates 2 minutes to sum up and conclude. It will be a strict 2 minutes, so please be aware of that. And I'm going to begin with Jason over on the far side there. Thank you, Jason.
Right, so we believe in family, community and nation, and we think we should be supporting us instead of the rest of the world. We've sold off our industry over the last 45 years, made a good job of it, the neoliberals, and we should be reinvesting in technology and industry and manufacturing things again. We were set to do that after the war, but for some reason, from the 60s onwards, 70s onwards, they decided, our business people decided that they'd make some rich pickings from our industry and sold a lot of it off. But now we need to get it back, and we need to get our children into AI and technology and all those, because that's the big issue of the 21st century, quite frankly. And that's where we need to be going. Okay.
Thank you. Catherine, do you want to speak up on this one? It's the last 2 minute chance.
So there's a saying, you know. So what if we did all this to make the world a better place, and really climate change wasn't a reality? It seems to me that we have many things that we could do to make the world a better place. And voting Green would be to say this is the kind of world that we want to move into. We suffer in this country from a voting system that means that many people have spent their whole lives either knowing that their vote won't count, or knowing that they need to hold their nose and vote for something that they don't really believe in because they are afraid that something else, even worse, will get in. And so we should take a moment to think what kind of mandate that gives to people, and notice that sometimes it's really important to send a message to say, actually, what we really wanted was this. And every vote that you cast for the Green Party will give us, A, the chance of saving our deposit, B, some small money that goes to the people that we do elect to the Green for the Green Party, called short money, which enables the people who do represent you, if you voted Green, to represent you, even though you're not in their constituency. And who knows, if all of you did that and thought, what I really want to do is send a message that I'd like the Green Party, we might win.
Thank you, Chris, from the Reform.
Yeah, I think at the heart of reform is really about change, and you've heard the Labour candidate talk about change, but he's talking about change from the Conservatives to Labour, and the strategy of the Labour Party has been to keep quiet on everything because they know it's only their election to lose. They really can't lose it. They can only make a gaffe and lose it. So actually, that's what they're banking on, which is why we hear vagaries like the big picture and the long term, because actually there is no short-term plan. The Labour manifesto is completely silent on the big issue of immigration, and however you stand on it, it is a big issue. We've got 700,000 people net coming into the country at the moment. Not a single word. They're also stony silent on taxation in most areas, with a definition of a working person being basically such that everybody is fair game for a tax increase. The Tories, I think, have given up and know that they've lost. They look like they're in loser mode in every behaviour, and have also behaved appallingly in terms of probity and the general principles of being in any office, to be honest, let alone government. So reform is genuinely about change and getting stuff done in the short term. And I think the candidates that I've seen, I'd like to say, including myself, are all about those immediate actions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paco, 2 minutes to tell us why we should vote for you.
I think I will promote the proportional representation. Perhaps we all come and working for you, and bearing in mind your best interest and your family and your future. But also, I am concerned that we have issues, big issues that we should be aware, like bioweapons and artificial intelligence. Keep an eye on that, because they will be coming very, very far, very hard.
Chris from the Liberal Democrats.
We've had a wonderful evening this evening. We've covered so many topics. But this election is really about saving the NHS, dealing with the cost of living crisis, and the many environmental issues and challenges that lie ahead for us, and responding to those, the climate emergency, the nature crisis, and many, many local environmental issues. And we've touched on some of those. But there's some big policy areas we haven't talked about much, about housing, how having a decent home is the basis for fulfilling your life. And that's such an important issue, particularly for our young people. Trust and integrity and reform of our democratic processes, I think, would make a huge difference on trust and integrity. If people were actually accountable and knew that what they did would have an effect on whether they stayed in. Education. I've been a school governor for many, many, many years, and our education funding has been cut and cut and cut over the last 10 years. And we're losing teaching assistants and all over the place. That's got to be another big issue we deal with. But also, it's about your local representative. This is my local area. My children go to school here. I've lived here for 10 years. I've been a local councillor here for 5 years. This is my local area. I stood here in 2017. I stood here in 2019. I'm absolutely committed to South Norfolk and to representing all the residents of South Norfolk. That's, for me, one of the most important things. I want to represent my local community and make sure they actually get proper representation, which for the last 20 or so years they just have not had, and they deserve it.
John.
Thank you. I just look at the timer. Right, Britain isn't broken. I don't care what you read on Twitter, or you might have read it. Britain is a country to be proud of. Our best years are ahead of us, and the country appears to be in a funk at the moment, talking ourselves down. We need to shake ourselves out of it. Britain is a great country, but we've got challenges which we're going to need to address to keep us in the first rank of nations. Look, COVID hasn't been mentioned. It's left a scar. There's 1 million people who, before COVID, would have been working and aren't now. We need to generate the wealth to pay the taxes to keep the public services going. That's really important. The plan is working. Inflation is down to 2%. That's a real big achievement, it having been up to 10. Interest rates will surely follow. Wages through the national living wage have increased by 35% since 2016, and national insurance is down. There is more money in people's pockets. Of course, I'm disappointed we're not getting the credit for that, but we can't afford to go back to square one. Square one means even higher taxes that suppress entrepreneurship and demand in the economy. Ignoring immigration, a dog that hasn't barked, as Chris said earlier in this. It's a key issue because it's driving up costs of living and demand for everything. We've had some wonderful achievements, improvements in literacy, technology, energy efficiency. There are so many things we can do. I'm really proud to know Poppy Simister-Thomas. I know she hasn't been able to be here today. She's my friend. I've really got to know her well. She's a hard worker. She really thinks deeply. She's a young mother with her feet on the ground. She's come from business and yet she understands how the government works. She would be an excellent representative. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe it in my heart. I commend her to you and I hope you vote for her. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party in aggregate does have the clear plan to deal with the big issues. It's got the bold action to secure your future.
And Ben.
Thank you very much, and thank you as well for organising this evening. The simple question you've all got to ask yourselves is, 14 years on, do you feel any better? Are your services any better? Are the waiting lists longer? The answer to that across the board is no, unfortunately. And there are better days lying ahead of us. In all my answers tonight, there have been actionable points. Not bluff and bluster about different hopes, wishes and maybes. There have been numbers that you'll be able to judge us on in 5 years' time, that if we've implemented them or not. From health to education, from our transportation to our international policy, all of it is measurable. All of it is practical. There are tough times, and we always show the best of ourselves in tough times. We dig deep, we find the resources we need, because we are a fantastic country. Now, looking forward, you've heard a little bit more about me. You've heard how I grew up here. I'm standing because I want to repay the debt of the place that made me. I want to make sure that going forward, no more people have to face what I did. The opportunity should be here in South Norfolk, and we can do that. There is so much for us to give on those. So when we look forward to the future, we ask, do we want to turn the page? Do we want to make sure that we have change, meaningful change that will last, and that will include everyone? No one being left behind, everyone being pulled with us together. Because at the moment, society isn't working as well as it could have. And I think that is really the next step forward for us. We can build on previous successes that last Labour governments have had, and we can deliver for everyone. So on July the 4th, please consider and vote for proper change and vote for the Labour Party.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to Adrian and the other people at the parish church who've organised this event. Thank you to you. When I told one or two friends that I was going to chair this, they asked me to make sure I got a hard hat. I don't know why, because you've all been very well behaved. You seem to have listened intently. Thank you very much. And thank you to the panel.
And thank you to you.
Oh, well, it's an easy role I had. But it is 10 o'clock and it's time to go home, according to the schedule. Adrian.
And thanks to Rachel for the timing. That was a really important job as well, everyone setting up. So just a final word from me, mulbartonhustings.uk. That's the website. Thank you for all the engagement with that. It's had a lot of visits, a lot of interest, and it's still live. It's still going to be a useful resource for everyone locally. You'll see the video of this on there as well as on YouTube. And you might, I mean, it's lovely having John with us, but we haven't seen Poppy tonight. But she has recorded a video, just 2 minutes, so that we'll be able to actually hear from the candidate herself. So I'll put that video on, along with the 2-minute spiels from the other 6. Do you think we should put John's one on there as well? I don't know, we'll see, maybe. But certainly there's more resource there. And an invitation to you guys, if you want to respond, we've got over 50 questions that people locally have submitted. If you want to just jot down some answers, by all means we'll put it on the website so people can see what you have to say about each of them. Anything you give us, we'll go there, so it will be fairly done. So thank you all very much, God bless you, and good night.
Thank you all very much. Hope you enjoyed yourselves as much as it was on the